And welcome to another episode of Crunch Time. As always, I'm Noah Elkin.
I'm Austin Mann. As usual, we have a variety of topics from the amazing world of sports. So Noah, hit me with that first one.
All right, Austin. Well, last week, Markelle Fultz of the 76ers, former first overall draft pick, was diagnosed with neurogenic thoracic outlet syndrome. So he'll probably be out 3 to 6 weeks, is the estimate. Austin, the interesting thing about this story is that Fultz has been struggling for a while, as you know, most avid NBA fans know. But it was kind of up in the air as to why. Like, some people thought maybe he had some shoulder issues. Some people thought it was a mental thing. Some people just thought he was a straight up bust. But I don't know. I think this is. I don't want to say good news because it's like an injury, but it's sort of like not the worst news because maybe this is light. You know, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. Once he gets over this, this bump, he'll be good to go.
I think it's a mixture of all three. Maybe not the bust part, just because we haven't had a good sample size of his game. But I think it's definitely a mental and physical thing. I mean, obviously, I think physically there is something wrong with his shoulder, but the thing that got to him was that no one believed him, and so everyone just assumed, yeah, he's just mentally not ready for the NBA, and I think that just really hurt his confidence, just because he's been saying he's had shoulder issues, but then no one's out here believing him, and so that kind of just plays into that psyche, and really just messes with you, because as a young NBA player, you're still trying to figure out your footing, just because he was a stud college player and he was at the top of the top. Now he's just back at the bottom, still trying to figure out where he stands on the team. And I think just having that, people telling him, yeah, man, it's just you're really just getting too much into your head, really made him get into his head, just because like no one believed him.
Yeah.
And everyone just assumed that he just wasn't ready.
Right. So let me ask you this: Say Fultz comes out of this and performs like he did in college. Do you think he'll remain a backup point guard on the Sixers, or do you think he'll end up being traded somewhere? Because I know there's been a lot of speculation about him being traded, although I think a lot of that was based on the fact that he wasn't gonna do much for the Sixers.
Yeah, I think if he comes back strong, I definitely think he should come back in a backup role. But I think if he comes on, shows why he was the number one pick, I don't see why he can't slot into the starting lineup. I understand Ben Simmons is the point guard, but I mean he can take JJ Redick's role in that starting five.
Oh, maybe JJ. I mean, even if Markelle Fultz comes back healthy, JJ Redick is a really good 3-point shooter.
It is true, but I mean, really, nothing against JJ Redick. All he can do is shoot threes, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's why he usually plays the shooting guard position. I feel like Markelle Fultz is the type of guy who, if he's going to perform at a high level, he needs the ball in his hand a decent amount.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how the Sixers balance the rotation once he comes back. But, I hope nothing but the best for him in his recovery, because I want to see Markelle Fultz just be wet, because he was so fun to watch in college.
Yeah. Hopefully he can play, like the number one pick that he was. All right. Nick Young joined the Nuggets today. That's pretty significant. I mean, the Nuggets are a really good team and a really good Western Conference right now. They've had their fair share of injuries. Gary Harris has been out. They're obviously still waiting on Isaiah Thomas and eventually
Will Barton.
Oh yeah, right. Will Barton too. Eventually, Porter Jr. will make his debut, but I don't know. It looks like the Nuggets are just kind of stacking up on shooters.
Yeah, I definitely think that they were right in their choice a few years ago to build around Jokic rather than Nurkic, even though he's doing good things in Portland. I think the Nuggets have definitely. I mean, if as a side note, Mike Malone was a former Warriors assistant coach. And I think he's just seeing that system, the way it's just all about floor spacing. The Nuggets are essentially emulating the Warriors' style of play. Because if you watch them play, they pass a lot, and who pass a lot? The Warriors. So I think they're building up that winning formula in today's NBA game, and I definitely respect the move. Like Nick Young, I mean, he's a very streaky shooter, but I mean, when he's on, he's on. And like last year for the Warriors, he came in clutch at certain moments and made shots when the Warriors struggled. So I think stacking up on shooters is the way to go for a winning team in the NBA, just because 3 points means a lot more than 2 points now. And so just having more people on your bench, on the floor, to be able to make those shots really helps in this kind of NBA game.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. Once everybody's healthy on the Nuggets, say everybody's back by, I don't know, late this month or early January, where does Nick Young fit in the rotation? I assume he's not going to be a starter. Does he come off the bench?
I say he's like a good 15 minutes a night kind of guy, because Nick Young doesn't really aspire much hope on the defensive end, and sometimes when he's on, he gets a little too carried away and will just start making mistakes. But I think if you use him effectively, then Nick Young is gonna put up decent numbers for you off the bench. I don't see why he can't average 8 points off the bench a night or something like that, as long as you just use him correctly.
Yeah, I mean, if he can just hit, 1 or 2 threes a night in big spots, that's huge for any team. So it'll be interesting to watch that in Denver. All right, Austin. So a lot of people were confused about the Boston Celtics kind of having a slow start. You look at their roster and they're absolutely loaded with talent. Obviously, you got Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving coming back from injury. Jason Tatum, who was the 3rd overall draft pick last year, has been balling out. But at one point, they had a 500 record. Now, they have won 5 in a row, including a 56-point win in Chicago. Austin, do you think the Celtics are back on track, back where they belong?
I think the Celtics are definitely back on track. I think their early season struggles just attributed to the fact that, a lot of the key guys on this year's team was injured last year down the stretch, and so they just need that time to build the chemistry, and it shows. Gordon Hayward had a really rocky start to the season, but now he's starting to play like Gordon Hayward of the Jazz, and so I think that they have that necessary time to build the chemistry, and I definitely see them trending upwards, and I think they should definitely be back in that thick of the conversation of Eastern Conference team, top of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think coming into the season, I was picking them as probably a 1 or 2 seed at the end of the year, but now, I mean, even with them looking better in recent days, they kind of look more like a 4 seed because, the Bucks have been surprisingly good. Honestly, I didn't think the Sixers were going to be quite as good as they are. Of course, Jimmy Butler has helps that as well, and obviously the Raptors are still number 1. So I don't know. I think it'd be. I don't think they'll fall below 4 or 5, but I think it's going to be tough for them to crack that top 3.
I definitely see a scenario where they take over, they jump the Sixers for that 3rd spot. The Bucks are really hot shooting wise, and so I definitely see a scenario where the Bucks hit a cold stretch just because they were one of the hottest teams initially, and they've had some off games, but never a consistent stretch of just bad games. So I think eventually the Bucks will reach that mid-season slump. So I see a scenario where Boston climbs up to 2. I don't see them catching the Raptors just because the Raptors have just consistent contributors night in and night out at all positions. So I think from that, the Celtics will definitely be at least a top 3 seed in my opinion. But, it's too early to judge, and there's still a lot of season to watch.
Yeah, as of right now, the Boston Celtics are actually in 5th place behind the Pacers, but that's only 4.5 games behind the 1st place Toronto Raptors. So it'll be fun to see how that all plays out. We're going to move on to football now. In the NFL, we actually had a really fun week of football. Starting way back on Thursday, Derrick Henry, of all people, ran for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns, including a 99-yard touchdown run. And based on just total yards in the game, this is actually a top 20 performance all time by a running back.
All I got to say is watching the highlights. I didn't catch the game, but damn. That 99-yard touchdown was insane. He should have gone tackled, I think, after that 20-yard game, and he really powered through. I think it shows the Tennessee Titans have been as a team all year, just because they have games where they're really on and they look like a top 10 team in the NFL, then they have games right after where they just show that they're a bottom 10 team.
Yeah, they've been inconsistent as hell all year.
It's either they're really good or they're just really bad. so you don't know. But I really just respect Derrick Henry just because a lot of people have been saying he's in his sophomore slump. He's maybe last year was just a fluke, but then came out and showed why he won the Heisman in college, why he was worthy of a second round pick, and why people should not doubt him anymore just because, he can go off for games like this. And I see a scenario where he does this again just because he's a mixture of a good power and speed back. Like, it's rare you find that combination in the NFL now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely rare. I think, obviously, this is a fantastic performance, but I don't know. In my eyes, Derrick Henry still has some work to do to prove that he is, maybe a top 10 back in the league, because right now, even after this performance, in my eyes, he's not a top 10 back in the league.
I think he's like top 15. I think what he needs...
On a good day.
On a good day. But I think what he needs to do is improve his pass catching abilities, and I think he just needs to improve his blocking skills just for, like, when the quarterback goes, just because, Marcus Mariota gets injured, and he's the last line of defense, theoretically, if they're in that passing situation.
Yeah, and also just consistency. I mean, we already talked about the Titans as a whole. Just, give good numbers every week. That you don't have to put up 238 yards and 4 TDs every week, but, I don't know. I feel like he could definitely be a lot more consistent, and that would help the Titans.
I think a lot of it has to do with his inconsistencies with Mariota just being, like, injured every other week, essentially. So I think just not having that consistent passing game to open up the run game has hurt him. But, I think next year you'll see a newer Derrick Henry. I enjoy watching him play, and I hope he brings out another performance like this because it was fun to watch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years what happens in Tennessee because, the Titans are kind of a middle-of-the-pack team right now. It's hard to build when you're in that spot. They're definitely not in a rebuild. I feel like they're definitely closer to a win now sort of state, but they're not really legit contenders. Mariota has not been bad, but like when he's been healthy, he's been a serviceable quarterback for sure. But I don't know if he is a Super Bowl worthy quarterback or if he ever will be.
I think a lot of it just has to do with him staying on the field consistently, just because you come back in and then you play for a few weeks, then all of a sudden, like, once you hit your stride, it's interrupted by another injury. So I think with Mariota, he just needs to show that he can stay healthy, stay on the field, and do his thing. But, I think the Titans have a lot of issues too, especially on the defensive end. Their offensive line has been suffering through a lot of health issues this season. So I think if the Titans have players who can stay on the field consistently with their level of talent, I don't see a scenario where they don't become a winning team next year. But health is very important in the NFL, so if they can't stay healthy, the Titans aren't a winning team.
Yeah, we saw what health can do to a team like the 49ers this year. All right. Well, the Patriots lost in Miami to the Dolphins on Sunday. There's a pretty wild last play. The Patriots were actually up by, I want to say, like five or 6 points. The Dolphins ended up carrying out the Miami Miracle, as it's been called so far, a series of laterals, and the ball ends up in
Kenyon
Drake's hands. Yeah, he takes it all the way to the house for a game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, I really just expected that pass by Ryan Tannehill to be intercepted, to be honest, just because he threw it to, like, Kenny Stills in, like, triple coverage. But Kenny Stills, like, he caught the ball, and great lateral, because, like, immediately after he caught the ball, he was tackled, but he still found a way to get the lateral off. And I think, man, just really, I didn't expect that to happen, just because the Patriots just miss a lot of tackles that.
Well, yeah, and that's super uncharacteristic. Of the Patriots. I mean, they're probably the last team in the league that you expect something like that to happen.
It's just like that play came down to fundamentals, and New England has like the best fundamentals in football. But I mean, honestly, like, watching the Patriots lose makes me happy. So
yeah, you know what else that play came down to is just speed, because at the end it was a foot race between Kenyon Drake and Rob Gronkowski, who actually had been subbed in at the safety position. Of course, Belichick was expecting a Hail Mary type of play. So, in that state of mind, it's not a bad idea to get the big guy down in the end zone.
With good hands.
Yeah, exactly, to disrupt the pass. Miami didn't do what Belichick expected, and like I said, it came down to a foot race,
Yeah.
and Rob Gronkowski is just not quite as fast as Kenyon Drake.
It was one of the few occasions where Bill Belichick got outcoached.
Yeah, well, I don't even know about outcoached, but he definitely got outplayed.
I mean, honestly, just because if you look, I mean, I don't really know who exactly was on the field, but based on the way like the personnel on the field at the time was mostly like big guys with good hands.
Exactly, because
But-
they were game planning for the Hail Mary.
Yeah, and then but like Adam Gase made the decision. He's like, okay, I see them trotting out like a lot of big guys. They're probably expecting us to pass. Why don't I just put the fastest guys and see what they can do?
Well, yeah, and also the Dolphins were roughly at their own 40-yard line.
Yeah.
You know, if you have Aaron Rodgers, you know, you can do the Hail Mary, but Ryan Tannehill, or it might even have been Osweiler.
No, it was Tannehill.
Was it Tannehill at the end? All right, well, regardless, either of those guys probably don't have the arm power to get it all the way down to the
Just
end
'cause-
zone.
especially Tannehill, because like he's been dealing with shoulder issues all year, and like honestly, he doesn't really throw a good, deep, accurate ball.
Yeah, so I don't know. It was, you know, I'm not necessarily a fan of the Dolphins by any means, but it was a cool story. Miami winning at home against the Patriots, but you know, beating Rob Gronkowski at the end.
Yeah.
You know, it was fun to watch.
Honestly, like their playoff chances are still alive because of that play. So
Yeah, and they played the Patriots well all game, and
Uh-huh.
there were a bunch of lead changes. No one was really ever up by more than a possession.
But like Miami always every year plays the Patriots well for some
Oh,
reason.
yeah.
It's just it's a weird like
It's that interdivisional rivalry. Yeah, and the Bills and the Jets do it too.
just like something about the Patriots that makes teams just step their game up.
Yeah. All right. Well, George Kittle, tight end for the 49ers, received for 210 yards in just the first half. He had a touchdown. He actually broke the record franchise record for most yards by a tight end. He was literally only 4 yards short of breaking Shannon Sharp's single game tight end yard record, which stands at 214. The craziest thing though is George Kittle did that all in one half. He didn't touch the ball in the second half of play.
Man, I mean, honestly, Nick Mullins should have just threw him like a 5-yard little pass just for that,
Yeah.
just for the sake of it.
Yeah, Kyle Shanahan actually apologized to Kittle after the game, and you know, apologized for not getting him the record. But I don't know. I know not touching the ball at all is maybe unexcusable in the second half, but you can understand. Denver was probably game planning. You know, like, wow, we missed Kittle in the first half. We got to do a better job. Give him,
Yeah.
send him some double teams and such in the second half.
And it was a good move just because, like, think about how good the passing game was all throughout. Like, they were really just locking up the outside, not really thinking about the middle of the field where Kittle mostly catches most of his passes. And then after the second half, come back, lock down the middle of the field, but then that leaves your outside receivers wide open. So I think it was just a good coaching decision by Shanahan. Like, obviously, like, it would have been nice to give Kittle, like, 1 or 2 chances to like, break the record. But at the end of the day, Kittle is a team player, and I think he's just more happy with the win. Doesn't really think about like his game. He's just ready for the next one.
Yeah, definitely. And he's in a sophomore season, so he'll have plenty of chances to
Yeah.
come back for Shannon Sharp's record one day.
And he's a top 5 tight end already in this league.
He's a top 3 tight end. You know, you got Zach Ertz, you got Travis Kelce, and I think you got George Kittle. And in my opinion, there's really no one else who belongs in that conversation at the moment. That's how I feel.
I mean, I really can't think of anyone else, too, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think Travis Kelce leads the league in yards by tight end, but George Kittle is actually second. He's ahead of Zach Ertz right now, which I think is catching a lot of people off guard.
And the thing is, like, the crazy thing about George Kittle is, like, his best skill is his blocking.
Yeah,
Like, that's
and it's so overlooked, but that's just another testament to how great of a tight end he is, and it'll be really exciting to watch him grow next year and catch passes from Jimmy Garoppolo, hopefully for at least a full season.
maybe he'll get the 300 with Jimmy.
right, it could happen. All right, well, speaking of the 49ers, previously to Sunday, both the 49ers and the Raiders had only 2 wins this year, so they were in line for the number 1 and the number 2 pick in the draft. On Sunday, both of those teams won. San Francisco against Denver and Oakland against
Pittsburgh.
Who did they play?
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it was Pittsburgh. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Pittsburgh missed that. That would have been was it game tying or game winning
I
field
think it
goal
was
at the end?
game winning.
Yeah, it might have been. I think it was. Anyways, so this is kind of mixing up the conversation for who's in line for that first pick, because now you have several teams: Oakland, San Francisco, and Arizona with just 3 wins. And if I actually found out about this recently, when it comes to draft position, head-to-head matchups don't matter.
Yeah,
it's all about strength of schedule, and Arizona has a slightly easier strength of schedule, although the 49ers and the Raiders actually have exactly the same strength of schedule right now. So these next 3 weeks will be real interesting and crucial. It'll end up, there'll be some games where the 49ers and the Raiders are not playing, but they'll have major impacts on who's going to get that first pick.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like, obviously I thought maybe the Raiders and the 49ers would just, ride it out. But honestly, these past weeks, both teams have been playing each of their opponents really tough. And I'm surprised that, no matter how bad the season has been for both these teams, they're still trying to pull out the W at the end of the day. So, honestly, if as a Raiders fan, I would prefer them to have the number 1 pick. If they don't, and if they pick up a new victory, honestly, I'm glad they won that week.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it'd be nice for both teams to get that number 1 pick, but Shanahan and Gruden both have a winning mentality, and I think both of them trying to rebuild are really looking at these last few games and trying to figure out who are going to be the guys moving forward and who is maybe not part of the long-term plan.
Yeah, I think with the Raiders especially, just because think about how many of our best players have been traded.
All of them.
All of them, essentially. Like Amari Cooper, Khalil Mack, arguably top 10 at position. Khalil Mack might be the best defensive player in the NFL right now.
Yeah, you can make a case for Aaron Donald or Von Miller, but easily top 3.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I just think John Gruden has made a lot of interesting choices, but I definitely think he wants to go younger, and he's just trying to see what pieces are there, and then build his image of the team, not necessarily what the previous regime had.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's so much of your rebuild is gonna come from this draft and next year's draft, because you traded away so much talent, but at the same time, you got a lot of really good picks back for it. So it's just a matter of really nailing those picks.
I mean, John Green's got a 10-year contract, so I mean, he can really screw up for the next 5 years. But then if the Raiders are good those last 5 years, everyone's not going to talk about how bad.
Yeah, I mean, shit, dude, he could win a Super Bowl and rebuild again all in the time that he just signed for.
Exactly, he's got the time, and honestly, you can't really fire him just because think about how big that buyout's going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. So we're going to end talking about the Heisman Trophy. Kyler Murray was crowned as the Heisman winner this year. Really tight race between Kyler Murray and Tua. A lot of people were arguing that, maybe Tua should have won. He was on probably the better team. They went undefeated. So I took the time today to look up some of their individual stats, and after poring over those, I think the right decision was made. I think Kyler Murray did deserve the Heisman. He had a 70.9 completion percentage compared to 67.7. He had over 4,000 yards compared to only 3,353 yards for Tua, and he had more touchdowns as well. And then I think one aspect that a lot of people didn't account for is the defenses of their respective teams. Alabama is rated as is the number 4 defense when it comes to points allowed per game. Oklahoma is well below the league average, which you don't see for a playoff team too much. So I think Kyler Murray definitely had to carry his team a bit more than Tua.
I agree. Just in terms of importance to a team, Kyler Murray essentially led Oklahoma to those 12 victories. Honestly, if he wasn't their quarterback, they could have been 1-12. That record could have been flipped. But Kyler Murray has kept Oklahoma consistently in the game, just because even against bad teams, Kyler Murray still had to stay in the game throughout. And Alabama is legitimately just an NFL defense. Think about how many top prospects do you have on their front seven, in their secondary. it's just kind of unfair. Like Tua didn't even really have to play the second half much, just because their defense had the game pretty much on lock in the first half, and like he had more talent around him too. It's like Kyler Murray, like outside of him, like Oklahoma doesn't really have much talent worth talking about. Like Alabama always had at least like 10 first round prospects on their team, and Kyler Murray might just be the only one who theoretically could get drafted, even though he's going to play baseball.
Yeah, no, I mean, Oklahoma's got a decent amount of talent, but not on the level that Alabama does. But one stat that kind of stuck out to me is Kyler Murray averaged over 6 yards per play, whereas Tua only had 4.52 per play. So that's like a yard and a half per play, and it doesn't sound like much, but even if you go 3 and out, that's 4.5 yards more just in one little series. That definitely adds up quick. So yeah, advantage Kyler in another category.
And also, like, another way that Kyler Murray affects the game is his feet. Like, he averages at least 60 yards rushing a game, in addition to throwing for at least 300 yards. Like, essentially, you're getting at least like 350 to 500 yards of production from one position alone, and that's huge. Like, Tua, great passer, very accurate, but he doesn't have like that same running ability as Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is as good of a passer and a way better runner than Tua. Tua's a great quarterback, but honestly, Kyler Murray just deserved this one. Think about how important he was for his team. Like, literally, like, he earned each and every one of those victories. Tua kind of rode the defense a little bit, had a slightly easier schedule, I feel like, than Oklahoma. So, honestly, like, right decision was made, and I was rooting for Kyler Murray the entire season, to be honest.
Yeah, well, the moral of the story is on December 29th, you better tune in to the Orange Bowl, where Alabama will play Oklahoma, and Kyler Murray, of course, will face off against Tua. That'll be a real fun one to watch, and should Oklahoma lose, it may be the last time we ever get to see Kyler Murray play football.
Yeah, depending on how his MLB career goes, like, this might be the last game we ever see him play football. But, honestly, it's been a great season. I'm glad if this was his legit, really only season of playing college football as a starting quarterback, at least he went out with a bang.
Oh, he absolutely did. He took the words right out of my mouth. But that's a good place to end on. We'll catch you back here next week. I'm Noah Elkin.
I'm Austin, man. See y'all later.